Bird Trip by Parker McCoy, who you'll find on Substack. Okay, I don't know how I wound up at the park. I took a break on the park bench in the middle of the Saturday afternoon. The bench isn't usually empty at these times. I savored the rest for my buttocks. I took in the air. Then I hacked a few times and spat. A duck expressed his opinion over my actions with more of a quack than the standard fowl terminology. I winked at him. He dove into the pond and further scorned me with a tail feather fluttering swim in the opposite direction. The man came into focus. He wore a bomber jacket and aviator sunglasses. Frankly, I think his woolly mustache would kick my ass all by itself. He stared straight at me. I glanced away and then back. He stroked the mammoth furry beast on his face, and then he nodded to himself and glanced behind himself and stepped forward. Okay. I got off the bench and apologized to my buttocks for the shortened rest and zipped toward the park's edge. I made it through a crowd of noisy body odor and then glanced back at the exit. Woolly Mustache continued his pursuit toward me, but the body odor crowd cut him off. I made my way down the sidewalk, checking my pace. I needed to put some time between myself and Woolly Mustache, but I also wanted to keep some sense about me. It's best not to lose your cool head in these situations. I entered the first shop to my right. Now, he could catch me in here, but it would be harder for him to commit whatever fiendish plan he harbored in front of witnesses. So I poked through the greeting cards and figurines among this rather fragrant crowd and found a baseball bat keychain that tickled me. I scanned the store. Woolly Mustache was inside, but he was on the other side of the store, still searching. So I made my way to the crowd at the counter. Then I dropped the keychain on the counter and slipped out the door. Okay. I breathed a little and took in the day. Another crowd gathered near the stop sign. Some guy spoke about some important issue of the day. I got in among them and nodded along. They all liked nodding and occasionally shouting, and they all agreed a lot. I nodded and agreed and pumped my fist in the air and yelled too. Woolly Mustache emerged from the store and scanned the area through his aviator glasses. He placed his hands on his hips. The guy was toast now. I yelled again with my agreeable crowd. Okay! Yelling proved to be a mistake. Maybe he picked up on my voice, or maybe I shouted at the worst possible time, but Woolly Mustache's head swiveled like a woolly wrecking ball back in my direction. I swallowed my embarrassment and left my agreeable tribe and turned. The red light was now on, but my crossing light sprang to life as well. I sped across the intersection. I scanned my surroundings, but there were no cops. Just more crowds. I walked in the opposite direction. A glance over my shoulder showed Woolly Mustache crossing the intersection with his aviator eyes locked on me. Okay. I turned into the stopped traffic and scrambled behind a black van. I hung my head and peered beneath the van and waited. Woolly Mustache's brown leather cowboy boots stomped through the collection of stopped cars, drifting in the wrong direction, like a catcher beneath a fly ball drowned out by the sun. So I crept behind another row of cars in the last lane. They honked at me and drove on by. I reached the corner of the building on this side of the street and turned. Woolly Mustache threw his hands up at the other end of the sidewalk back there. Okay. I breathed a little. Then I strolled on down the sidewalk. A policeman stood up at the red light a few buildings ahead. I made my way toward him past the alley and reached into my jeans pocket. The policeman looked around, waiting for something to liven up his day. I opened my phone. I had one text message. "We still meeting up at the park?" I smiled and pocketed the phone. I reached into my jacket pocket. Woolly Mustache sprang from the alley. Not okay. He grabbed my jacket lapels and spun me into the alley. I slapped and kicked and clawed my way away from his grasp and ran. My old track days came back to me. My legs moved like well-oiled hamster wheels, and my buttocks burned, but it was a good burn. The alley led to the next street. I sped up and breathed harder. Here it came, freedom from this woolly thing. Ka-crunk! I sailed through the air and smashed onto the cold pavement. A filthy white pizza box had broken my fall. I peered back. A toy of some sort, a red bird, had caused my tripping. Woolly Mustache grabbed me and pulled me up by my jacket and slammed me into the stone wall. A nearby dumpster provided the cherry on top of this whole scene. Hot garbage smells mixed in with Woolly Mustache's hard face and harder mustache. He said, "Give it to me." I said, "Whoa, mister, I'm not into that." Woolly Mustache slammed me into the wall again. "You thought you'd get away?" "I just want to be left alone." "Yeah?" "Yes." Woolly Mustache reached into my jacket pocket and then held up something. "Since my layoff, I've only been able to buy my son this one pack of baseball cards, and you were going to take them, you sorry piece of shit." I shook my head. "Go Cardinals, and you better go before I bat you over this wall." Woolly Mustache shoved me onto the sidewalk and then stomped back toward the park. Okay, I don't know how those cards wound up there. I strolled back toward the park. Thanks for listening. I'm Kris Kepler, and I hope you enjoyed listening to these stories as much as I enjoyed narrating them. I'd love for more people to hear these wonderful stories, so please share and tell your friends.